Yeah, absolutely.
That should be okay, right?
Absolutely, yes. It
Yeah.
works for me.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll just, you want me to just test sharing of the PPT and my video?
Yes, we would like to. So you could share your screen from your end, I suppose. And if you're finding any difficulty, please send the PPT, then we will share it here, whatever way you like it to.
I can share actually from here.
Yes, so
I'll have
please.
to quit and reopen, okay, because I have to give permission to the system to share my screen.
Yeah, that's okay. That's perfectly all
I'll
right.
leave the webinar and rejoin.
Right. Please do. Yeah, thank you so much.
Is my screen visible now?
Yes, sir. You are visible now.
I will also share my video and let's see it works.
Yes, please.
Hello, hi. Am I visible?
Yes, you are visible now.
Okay, great.
Right. So we are ready to start now. Welcome back after lunch. All the participants, welcome back after lunch. Post-lunch session, we are starting with Mr. Ajay Bhagwat. He'll be talking about various features of OBE, that is outcome-based education. And Mr. Bhagavat, just to apprise you, there are 40 participants connected online, almost 40 plus. So you may start, please. And any query coming online, I would be interrupting in between myself or Dr. Sandeep Saini to ask those questions. Participants would be writing the questions in the chat box, and I think that should be visible to you also.
Sounds good. So, very good afternoon to all of you. And thanks for inviting me to deliver this session in your FDP on outcome-based education. Am I audible to you clearly?
Yes, very much.
Okay. I will switch off my video to save the bandwidth.
That's perfectly all right.
Yes. So when I was discussing this with Dr. Saini yesterday, I thought that, I have also seen your uh, FDP sessions that you have planned, and I thought that it would be um, useful if I would share some of the thoughts about how to design the curriculum by using the fundamentals of the principles of outcomes-based education. So you all have a very robust process already in your institutions that is driven by the board of studies, and I mean, unless and until that process is in place, it is impossible for any institution to design the curriculum, update it regularly. However, when it comes to introducing the concepts of outcomes-based education in this process, fundamentally your process doesn't change much, but it adds a new dimension to the overall curriculum designing process. So obviously, I'm not going to introduce any new process that will kind of shuffle your current process upside down. It is not supposed to happen. It's about how to add another angle to your overall curriculum designing process. So that is something that I wanted to clarify upfront here. So let me begin with a few concepts of OB implementation in your curriculum designing process. So it essentially starts at choosing the, I mean, let me say this, that let's say you are either revising your current program, pick any one of the programs, and if you want to revise the curriculum to align it to the latest requirements of outside world students as well as institutions goals, educational objectives, which are redefined maybe in the recent past. Or the other case could be that you are introducing a completely new program in your institute. In both the cases, you have a great opportunity to influence the process with OBE. And OBE mandates that the the perspective of OB implementation has to be top down. So there has to be a set of program outcomes to begin with. So you have to choose the right set of program outcomes. It applies to old as well as a new uh, program. Then that drives your curriculum designing process to align the whole curriculum to the program outcomes that you are going to choose. And then obviously it goes to the designing of the courses, course outcomes. Obviously, then it goes to the assessments, and then you analyze the outcomes and see whether the assumptions made by you in the beginning are uh, were right. And if there were any gaps in those assumptions, then OB outcomes analysis gives you that edge, that opportunity to identify what those gaps are and what could be done to minimize those gaps over a period of time, obviously. So let me begin with choosing the right set of program outcomes. Since this is a kind of very compact session, I have actually created a slice of my overall presentation on OB that would fit here for the and meet the context of this session. So in case you don't get any particular concept, you may raise your hand, ask your question, and let us spend time more time on those the concepts that you probably wouldn't get clearly. But let me begin with designing the and choosing the right set of POs. As you know, and also all of you are aware of NBA accreditation process. So it begins with institutional educational objectives. And it could become, I mean, I've just given a few examples to drive this discussion further. Let's say your institution wants to be one of the top institution in your domain. The domain could be, engineering, or it could be management. And let's say you want to become one of the top institutions in your domain in your region. That drives obviously the program education objectives. It could be, let's say, the graduates will demonstrate the mastery of the program's core discipline at a level that is recognized as outstanding by peers, employers, and graduating the other schools also in your domain, right? That, let's say, that is your program educational objectives, which will drive choosing the right set of program outcomes. For example, generally the theme of the program outcomes could be, let's say, deeper discipline knowledge. You want to impart that. You want to impart analytical and critical thinking, practical skills and application, maybe exposure to outside world in the sense the global exposure. So it could mean, sending the students abroad and interact with other universities, students in other universities, understand how their teaching learning process, so on and so forth. It could be something like this. So, the educational objectives at the institute level will drive the program education objectives, which in a way provide a theme for you for choosing the right set of program outcomes. And this theme obviously then also is mapped to the curriculum designing. So you may want to say that in case we have to create students, develop the abilities of analytical and critical thinking, then probably we may have to add more experiential learning opportunities, global and cultural exposure, professional development has to happen. And the pedagogical practices that currently you have implemented may need certain change in this process as well. So that's all about the curriculum designing. Am I audible clearly? Just I'm rechecking. And the screen is visible. Just a second. Somebody's calling. Hello. So it is audible. Hello. I hope that I am audible clearly to all of you. Those who have joined online, are they able to see my screen clearly? And am I audible to all of you? You are not audible, by the way, to me. All right. All right. Yeah. I've received a confirmation here. Yes. From Dr. Nikhil and others. Sounds good. So now to take this concept further, to pick the right set of program outcomes, we may have to use some standard taxonomies applicable to your domain. And typically for engineering domain, as well as even if you look at the curriculum release, the framework of outcome-based education released by UGC, you will find the graduate attributes written here on the left side of the screen. And that could become your reference point to pick and choose the right set of program outcomes for you. So this is a kind of a best practice for choosing the program outcomes, first by looking at the standard taxonomies like graduate attributes. And this is globally accepted set of graduate attributes, which can help you to pick and choose the right uh, attributes that you would like to inculcate in your students of your program. So let's say that now the right side of the screen shows you that, okay, for your new program or for revising your old program, you want to consider these 5 to 6 or 7, 8 program outcomes for your students. But those are the standard ones, right? Your discipline of your program will require certain program outcomes which are very specific to your program. So, for example, aeronautical engineering will require a very specific program outcomes compared to civil engineering or management, right? So naturally, you may have to pick some of the standard uh, attributes which are written in the graduate attributes taxonomy of graduate attributes, or some other reference which you believe is the right one for your institute. You can pick and choose the standard attributes from that. And from your proposed curriculum, you may want to add certain program outcomes which are specific to your program, right? So this gives you a comprehensive list of program outcomes, and that will drive obviously the curriculum designing process. Now imagine that you have come up with the right set of program outcomes, which then will help you to pick and choose the right set of courses, and then it will help you to design the course outcomes as well as the questions for meeting those course outcomes, right? So I'm going to explain this whole process in detail later on. Now, what happens is that once you create these mappings and relationships and alignment of the courses and the program outcomes, assessments, and the question, it creates a very complex web, because each one of the course may have one-to-many relationship with the program outcomes. Likewise, a program outcome also can have more than one relationship with the courses. So this could be your kind of OB framework. It establishes a clarity about how each course is going to help the students achieve the program outcomes. Likewise, if you look at from the top, it will help you to understand how each program outcome is going to be achieved by the students. If you look at from the top and see how many courses are mapped to a program outcome, what kind of assessments are going to be uh, you know designed by the teachers and also taken by the students, how those questions are mapped to the course outcomes, and how it is going to help you to assess the performance of the students with respect to the every question, every course outcome, likewise for every program outcome. And what is more important here to note is that this web of relationship is not going to be static. It will always evolve, because you might introduce newer courses in the future, or as I mentioned earlier, if you have picked up a set of program outcomes by considering certain assumptions, those assumptions will get tested, evaluated after the end of the first academic year maybe, and you may want to adjust maybe the assessments a little bit, or you may want to add more importance to a particular course rather than, and reduce the importance of some other course which you want to do for the balancing the overall performance of the student. If you are finding that in certain areas the expected student performance was better than what is actually you have found, and then you may want to devote more time to those critical courses or the themes of your program. And based on that, this relationship will keep on changing. So now, to take this discussion further, what I'm going to do is show you how the program outcomes drive the process of curriculum designing. So I'm going to pick certain program outcomes which you will find also written in your NBA accreditation manual. Let's say that these are your program outcomes. There are 12 such program outcomes typically are recommended by NBA, but obviously it's not a mandate on you that you must use these program outcomes only. You can always pick and choose the right ones for you and add the program specific outcomes. But let's imagine that for now that these are your program outcomes that you want to go ahead with. If you now start looking at these program outcomes from the perspective of how those are related with the skills or the attitudes, right? In other words, affective domain and psychomotor domain, then you may be able to kind of group them in those three domains of learning, which are knowledge, skill, and the attitude, or in other words, those are cognitive domain, psychomotor, and affective domain. I might use these terminologies interchangeably, but I will try to kind of stick to one um, uh, group, such as knowledge, skill, attitude. I will try to stick to this only as far as possible. But in other, there is other there is other terminology, which is cognitive domain, psychomotor domain, and affective domain. These are the three learning domains typically are referred here in our discussion. All right, so these three domains are primarily coming into existence because of their association with the learning that happens through the cognitive, psychomotor, and affective domain. But essentially, the teacher has to always think about what knowledge uh, I am delivering, or the overall program is delivering to the students, right? So this knowledge can be easily divided into these three domains, such as declarative knowledge is associated with cognitive domain, which is about what, and the skill is always about how, when, and why. And when it comes to the affective domain, it is about the emotions, attitude, values, and motivations and feelings. These are all about the learning process and nothing to do with the outside of the institution behavior of the students. We are only referring to the process of learning, how the attitude of the learning, the emotions the students go through when they are learning something, and also their values, their motivation to learn more, go deeper, and what kind of feelings they have after they learn something that is something new to them. It's kind of helping them to progress or not. So they will carry a lot of those emotions and the feelings. It will help them to develop the attitude towards learning more and as desired by the institute, and that shows their character, right? So this character building is all about the affective domain. Again, this is about their exposure to the learning process and nothing to do with the outside of institution behavior. So typically, this is what the relationship is, and in what part we teach them the core concepts, theories, methodologies, terminologies, so on and so forth. In the skills, we teach them the communication skill, critical thinking, problem solving, so on and so forth. And in the affective domain area, we teach them leadership qualities, self-directed learning, right? Lifelong, how to become lifelong learner, cooperation and working in the teams, multicultural competence, moral and ethical awareness. These are the typical groupings, or you can categorize the program outcomes in this way, right? Now, obviously, you can't teach or the students can't learn the communication skill or the critical thinking without knowing what is critical thinking, right? How to think critically, how to solve problem, right? Before they start solving the problem, before they start thinking critically, we as a teacher will have to deliver what is critical thinking, what is communication skill, what is analytical reasoning, right? So there has to be a theoretical aspect that has to be covered in what, and when it comes to actually doing it, implementing it, it goes into psychomotor domain. So this is all interrelated. You can't dissect it easily and say that this is this is only related to declarative knowledge. These are all interrelated subsets, right? So these arrows can show you how the relationship could be established here. All right, now typically these declarative knowledge is also called as factual and conceptual knowledge. This is procedural knowledge and knowing what is the process, right? Riding on the bike and then using it from going from point A to point B. I know the theory, but I have never used the cycle to actually achieve it. So that will still remain the conceptual knowledge, but when I would ride on the bike, it will become my procedural knowledge, right? So, and obviously this attitude, values, and motivation will remain as a separate set of knowledge that they will have. So again, there How to become a self-directed learner, right? How to become a lifelong learner is again, I have to know, as a student, I have to know the theoretical aspect of that. And then once I would start implementing it, it become once again my procedural skill, right? So this is also related with process. Now, a significant part of the what knowledge is delivered by the teacher. It happens in the classroom. Mainly the teacher is responsible or the plays a significant role in delivering what declarative knowledge. But here in this area, the teacher's role becomes lesser and less, and this activity becomes more and more student driven. Um, Again, in the affective domain, the learning of the student will happen through some experiences, but there the teacher's role become a mentor's role. And again, this activity is mostly student driven, right? So the first foundational knowledge is delivered by the teacher. The teacher's role in the mid part of, I mean, the psychomotor domain, the teacher's role is to create assignments, create learning experiences, and offer the student to opportunity to implement the declarative knowledge. But when it comes to building, developing the attitude of the learning, the role of the teacher is mentor's role, and that's how the overall classification of these three areas of learning I can do. The quickly the you know the Just to discuss this, you must be already aware of this, but just to kind of load this into your active memory, I'm going to quickly go through these 3-4 slides here. Factual knowledge refers to the information or the data that can be objectively verified and typically based on the established facts. It could involve specific details, names, dates, events, and other concrete pieces of information. The conceptual knowledge is about understanding the abstract ideas, principles, theories, relationship between the different concepts, and it goes beyond mere the facts and focuses on the comprehension of underlying concepts and their interconnections. Obviously, procedural knowledge is about how to perform some tasks, activities, how to think critically, how to communicate, how to implement a process. It encompasses practical skills, steps, and strategies required to carry out the specific action. To explain this diagrammatically, factual knowledge could be discrete pieces of information. The student is yet to kind of find out the relationship between them, but once they start finding the relationship, it becomes the conceptual knowledge. And when they know how to go from point A to point B, it becomes the procedural knowledge, right? So I don't know whether it is possible for me to ask questions and get your answers, but essentially, I would like to ask a question a little later. What is the difference between the skill and the competency? If you are ready with your answer, please. I mean, the moment you're ready with the answer, you can just raise your hand, and we can interact. So the fourth dimension here, we have looked at the factual, conceptual, and procedural knowledge, but there is another dimension which is called as metacognitive knowledge, and that encompasses generally the other three knowledge dimensions. So if this is the factual knowledge, the conceptual knowledge encompasses that, right? It is larger, it has more importance than just having the factual knowledge, right? And the procedural knowledge obviously requires factual knowledge as well as the conceptual knowledge, and only then a procedural knowledge could be um, obtained, correct? But once the procedural knowledge is used to implement something or doing something, we might end up doing some mistakes in our steps, right? And that requires some kind of reflective thinking. That requires, why I'm unable to execute these steps correctly, why my answer is not closer to the standard, after doing some kind of, experiment in the lab. So this requires reflective thinking and then going back to the procedural knowledge, find out whether I was making any mistake and what kind of fine tuning is required in my abilities to perform certain tasks, right? So that requires self evaluation, reflective thinking, and also then regulate my learning process. So probably I might say that, probably something is not understood by me clearly, so I will have to observe it once again. I may have to look at some other students and see how they are doing it, and probably that might help me to identify the mistakes I was doing, and that is, then I will regulate my thinking, my learning style, and then probably next time I will be able to do it correctly. So this is the metacognitive ability, and all over the world it is now accepted by many senior academicians that traditionally less importance was given to teach the metacognitive abilities to the students, and hence you will find many research papers written recently in the recent past, which typically typically in the sense, these research papers are pointing to the fact that uh, more importance to metacognitive abilities is to be given here onwards in higher education, and we cannot ignore this importance, because unless and until these metacognitive abilities like reflective thinking or regulation of learning is introduced and taught to the students, it is not possible for them to build the attitude of lifelong learner, for example, or they might not be motivated to learn beyond something that is superficial. So if your program mandates them to go deeper into certain areas, then maybe these abilities of metacognitive skills will be required to for your students to go deeper and perform better. So this metacognitive knowledge refers to awareness and understanding of one's own cognitive process. Cognitive process is learning process. It involves knowing how to plan, monitor, and control one's thinking and learning. Metacognition allows individuals to reflect on their learning strategies and make adjustment to improve their learning outcomes. So this is self evaluation. According to the theory of metacognitive, let me go back. It has got two domains: knowledge of cognition and regulation of cognition. Yeah. So knowledge of cognition is an individual's understanding or awareness of cognitive process, which are mental activities involved in thinking, learning, and problem solving. And in regulation, essentially, it is the process by which the individuals monitor and control and manage their own cognitive process. It involves being aware of one's thinking, learning strategies, and problem solving approaches, then making the deliberate efforts to enhance and optimize these processes. So essentially, if a student has these abilities, automatically the students, the performance in many other areas is likely to improve. So it's again, that's the reason the teachers will have to play the mentor's role there in helping the student build these abilities, so that automatically you will find their performance is being improved in in understanding the declarative knowledge, and also going deeper into mastering the skills. So the skills can then go from the basic to advanced, right? And their competence will can go up as to a level which is desired by your program, right? So that is why this is taking a front seat these days in higher education. This in the sense metacognitive skills. Now, when it comes to the the various domains which we are talking about, right? Cognitive domain, psychomotor, and affective domain. All these three domains have their own, the beginning and the advanced stages. So cognitive, no, as we have seen that declarative knowledge, it is about the what part of it. The teacher is teaching. However, the learning is happening at the other end, right? So how this learning happens? What are there any steps involved in it? Likewise, how the students are developing their competence. So is there anything that is similar to cognitive domain? associated with psychomotor domain? Is there something that is also related to affective domain? Let's look at that. And why we are discussing this is because these are the kind of concepts that have to be used for developing your curriculum once you identify your program outcomes. And that's why this discussion is it's important, before we dive into the curriculum designing process. So teacher teaches the knowledge. The knowledge is, as we have seen, it could be factual, conceptual, procedural, and metacognitive knowledge. This is the knowledge part. And then obviously when the students are learning, students will be going through the this cognitive process, which is known, also known as Bloom's taxonomy, right? Benjamin Bloom and his team did the research, and they came up with these 6 steps, which is nothing but the cognitive process. And typically it goes from remembering to creating level, right? That everybody knows about this. Sometimes it is also called as knowledge levels. Okay. By the way, are there any questions? Should I be should I keep looking at the chat box? Yeah. Yeah, some Professor Lakshmi said that POs are based on the competencies and COs on abilities. Yeah, let's look at this, whether whether once I share my ideas, whether those align with what you said. Let's also evaluate that at the end of the session. But it's an interesting thought that you have shared. Are there any other questions, please? All right, I'll go ahead. So remembering is exhibiting the memory, right? Understanding is demonstrating the understanding of facts and ideas. Applying is obviously, once some concepts are learned, then the student will have to apply those. Once the application is done, it will generate some outcome, and then students should be able to analyze whether that is the desired outcome of the process followed by the students. Evaluating whether the outcome is analyzed and whether the analyzed information is something that is again, it could be evaluated with some outside standard or between the groups of the student. Everybody's outcomes could be evaluated, and it could be used to create some new process, right? I'm just giving some kind of idea of how these are all interrelated steps involved in cognitive science. So create happens to be the last stage, and obviously it says that something new has to be created out of the once the students reach the final stage. It doesn't mean that is the students have to become Einstein or Vikram Sarabhai. It could be a very simple, small idea that that is kind of produced by the student or the group of the students which exhibits that they have reached the create level. In other domains of higher education, such as health sciences education, a similar idea of cognitive steps is used. It begins at knows how, shows, and then shows how, and then does. Sometimes it is also perform is also added there, but typically 4 steps are used by medical education. All right. So now we come back to remember that we are discussing about the cognitive domain, right? And we have just looked at the steps involved in the cognitive process, which begins at remember and ends at create. So let's look at how this cognitive process is also related with psychomotor as well as affective domain. It's a central idea, in fact. So let's see how it goes. So when you want to evaluate whether the students have reached remember level, right? You're teaching something, and you want the students to remember what is being taught by you, right? If to evaluate that, the kind of questions you might ask could be where, when, how, what, right? if you want to evaluate whether the students have understood it, then they should be able to answer why type of question or a how type of question. You are not asking them to go and perform something, but you might say that how a typical problem could be solved. They are not going to actually go out and solve the problem, but at least the theoretical aspect, the steps involved in it, the concepts required to be understood, it can be exhibited by the students, right? So you might ask questions like this. If you want students to evaluate the students whether they have been able to apply something correctly, then unless until they would apply it, some of these questions may not, they may not be able to answer. How it was used, did it work or not, for example, right? Then for the analysis, the evaluating the students at analyze level, you may ask these kind of questions: why it was used, why does it work, what did what is the cause of if something was failing constantly, or it worked only 3 times out of 5, right? Why did it not work 2 times? Why did it work only 3 times, right? So that is analysis. And then once the analysis is done, the application is once again done, and then probably the students may have understood what is the effect of their the fine tuning of how they used to do it earlier, or did they repair something to make it work 5 out of 5 times, right? So these are the kind of levels that you may want to evaluate by asking questions like this. What was the impact of your correction? What is the result? What if you had not used this component or that element, right? What would happen? So this is all about evaluation level. And create level, what can you design now, right? How would you develop it? What can you plan? What can you produce? How can you innovate? What can you invent? So the answer, the response to this could be theoretical, but this theoretical answer, is possible to be given by the student only if they have understood or gone through the earlier stages, right? Only then it is possible to expect a new information coming out of your question. Otherwise, it could be just already known written information. If that is being responded, then naturally you cannot say that the student has gone through all these stages. All right. So now let's add one more layer on top of this. These two steps are extremely important in the whole process of learning, right? And which is teacher led. So teacher may have to think about innovative pedagogical strategies, some teaching aids, thinking about how you are going to evaluate, and based on that you teach. So in software engineering, it is called as test driven development, right? TDD. Something similar to that, if you have an idea, I'm going to ask create these learning experiences, I'm going to evaluate the student based on these strategies, then obviously I have to make sure that my pedagogical strategies are also aligned with how I'm going to evaluate them. So these two stages are extremely important, fundamental, foundational, and teacher led, right? Teacher has to play a significant role in developing this foundation. But the rest of the 4 stages are student centric. Unless and until they are motivated to apply, unless and until they have the value of, that if I would not, if I would, or if I have failed to apply something, it is important for me to apply it again, or I must know more about, the similar concepts, how the others are doing, or other engineering problems, how those could be solved using the same model. So this is about motivation, and that's why the teacher's role here is related to creating those learning experiences, creating those assessments, labs, practicals, projects, and asking the questions, so designing the questions. So that's the role of the teacher here, but mostly the work will be done by the students. So that's why if you want your students to go beyond apply, then their motivation comes in picture significantly, right? Um, so obviously, out of 60 students, it's a typical batch size in India. Uh, you can't expect each and everyone to go here upwards, right? Likewise, application of some of the students will be shallow. Some of the students will be greater, right? Medium, average, and some of the students will be able to apply it, significantly better than the other students. So you will always find some categorization here, or categories of the students which could be bucketed into kind of slow learners, or medium and fast learners, something like that, isn't it? But what is more important here is that this is student-centric area. So that was about the cognitive domain. In psychomotor domain, now this is going to, this is another important part of the learning process and curriculum designing process as well. So central idea is the same, right? As you know, these 4 steps are related to application. So a lot of psychomotor will come in picture here, right? So the skills and the learning attitude development will happen here, and it is all associated with, how the learning experiences are created, how the students are motivated to go through those and build their competence, right, in all these levels. So it's all about so that's the reason their attitude development is equally important here for the students to go upwards in this direction, as well as horizontally, means from their basic levels of competence to the higher level of competences, right? In analysis, evaluation, as well as in creating some ideas. Uh, so here, this picture shows you that the teacher is teaching dance. And students are merely following the steps shown by the teacher. So this is called as imitation. Now, in the next stage, the teacher has couple of times explained the 10 steps to be taken here. And now the teacher says that, okay, now look at this picture and then perform these steps. Now, I'm not going to show you. So that is next level, which is manipulation. The third level is that now the student have achieved a better handle on it. And without even looking at the chart on the wall, they are able to take those 10 steps, generally accurately. But out of the 10 steps, how many students are able to perform those without any mistakes? Or some of the students might be taking more time than the other students, right? So their elegance, their precision in performing the 10 steps, as well as the time that they take to perform those 10 steps, is all that comes in picture. And the next step is obviously articulation and naturalization. So they are reducing their mistakes in those 10 steps. Not only that, but they are also now able to perform those, generally in the, very swiftly with the, and elegantly, right? So that is articulation. But when it becomes a natural skill, they don't have to be taught how to perform in synchronization, right? For example, the dancer here and the dancer here are mirroring each other. So she knows that I have to raise my right hand, and this dancer knows that I have to raise my left hand. Otherwise, the whole composure, will be completely disturbed. Or imagine that this dancer sits little later than this dancer, right? Again, the performance will be bad. So this is the complete group's understanding, and based on that, they would perform and create a elegant dance form performance in front of the audience. So that is called as articulation. So these steps of going from just following the teacher to kind of become a natural performer are all the steps involved into psychomotor domain. This is already kind of researched by many academicians, and they have come up with these 5 steps. I'm just kind of using their ideas to present this to all of you. This is not my original knowledge or something like that. uh, Now the affective domain also has a little bit of the stages involved in it. Motivation obviously could be external motivation, so it requires some kind of stimuli, asking the students the question, hey, do you have any question? I'm still pushing you to ask questions, right? That's external stimuli. This external stimuli is, the receiving. Then if you have any questions, now Professor Lakshmi responded, without me having to ask you whether you have any question. So that is a kind of, it shows that you're responding to what I'm telling you right now, right? Uh, so but still it is a little bit of external motivation, maybe in the boundaries of external to internal. But here, may I still, as a teacher, you may want to still push the students. Say, hey, do you have any question? And then I will wait for student to ask the question. Likewise, I'm asking all of you right now, right? Do you have any question? Type those into your chat box, and whenever time permits, I'll look at those. Right. So again, I'm creating that external stimuli here to kind of interact with each other. And this online media is again very difficult, because I can't see you in person physically, and then obviously I have to imagine that certain things are happening, and then I have to still deliver what I'm trying to communicate. So the media also could become a barrier sometimes, and hence it might be a problem for students to go from external motivation to internal motivation. So, but once you start valuing why you are there, why you are trying, you have chosen this program, why what you want to become after you finish the program, right? So you just as a student, they have to start creating their own value system. And once they start understanding the importance of their time investment, their resource investment, why they have to come to the college every day, make sure that they attend all the lectures, they make sure that they don't miss any practicals and all other extracurricular activities. This is about their value system. Every student has that. Um, some of them may struggle, some of them are good students, right? We all know that. Now, many students, you'll find that they are good at organizing themselves, right? They have their own. They have started to build, build their own value system. They are typically not, breaking the rules, the policies, and the regulations of the institute. So you may say that these students have their own value system, and they're also building and developing it. And so you will clearly find that these are the kind of levels which are involved into attitude development as well. Yeah, so now we have come to the end of the discussion about what is cognitive domain, psychomotor domain, and the affective domain. And now let's see how these three domains are very closely associated with each other, and how they influence the learning process of the students. So this is what something that I was earlier showing you, right? These labels let me correct myself. These cognitive process steps involved here, we have seen that this is teacher driven, these are the student driven. And hence, if you want students to apply, and it develop their competence on the, go from this basic levels to advanced levels in each one of these areas, then obviously they have to go from external motivation to the internal motivation, because this is all student driven. Many of the students may end up only at following the teacher, don't go beyond that. But some of the students will go towards the article precision and above. Now, why this is important from the perspective of curriculum designing is because if you believe, let's say, for a particular program outcome requires the students to do analysis, but at what level? Should they be just following some kind of bookish procedure, or they should be achieving some kind of precision level? Precision level, you remember, right? The students are not following any written steps in the piece on a piece of paper. Neither the teacher is standing behind and watching and correcting them, right? You are not expected to do that. Now, will the students be able to analyze something on their own, right? And is that the program's requirement? Likewise, evaluating, likewise, creating, right? So naturally, a program of 4 years may not be able to build the abilities to create something new beyond, let's say, these basic steps. Maybe precision, a little bit of precision, right? Maybe many mistakes, but that is still fine. But evaluating again, you may want the students to reach the precision level, but you want them to be better than this level. Likewise, analysis, you want them to be really good at certain program outcomes, right? And application, again, you may want them to be again really good at their application of that. So a 4 years program may have some limitations, because you can't, you're not going to solve the world hunger, right? Obviously, there are some limitations, boundaries, and risk kind of constraints each institution has. And based on that, what best can be achieved is the decision taken by the institution, right? And then the curriculum is designed based on that. However, if you're receiving feedback from the industry where the students are taking their jobs, or if your program has one of the objectives, as your students have to become, most of your students should become, take the path of entrepreneurship and start their own business, right? If that is a goal of your program, then naturally some of the program outcomes of your program may have to be taken beyond just the manipulation or the precision, right? And then naturally you have to build that kind of motivation. A lot of focus on affective domain will be required, right? That's the idea. Any questions here? Time wise, how we are doing? Am I going too fast? So far, so good.
Hello, sir.
All right. Thank you, Professor Lakshmi. Okay, so coming back to this discussion. So teacher would take the students to from remember to understand and make them create some learning experiences so that students will apply that the knowledge that they have learned, and then to become more competent and go from left to the right side of um, uh, these competence levels. There has to be some iterative action, right? So because unless and until the skills are applied again and again and again, it is not possible to achieve the higher competencies. Likewise, higher competencies analyzing something. So the curriculum has to give that much time, for allowing the students to repeat, or you will have to design more learning experiences which are from basic to advanced. And so that's the reason the understanding of this in curriculum designing is very important, and that's why outcome if you want to influence your process with the concepts of OB, this is something that will be useful for you. So that is again the trade-offs have to be done by you. If you believe that certain program outcomes are extremely critical for the success of your program, then how much time are you devoting in your learning experiences, your teaching, evaluation, it will depend on where you want your student to go to, how many times they have to repeat those exercises. So, and also the teacher's role here is supposed to be evaluating that and providing that feedback, become their mentor, right? So that part of the time, that is the time required to perform these activities, also should be part of your curriculum designing. Otherwise, it is, in my humble opinion, it is not possible to build those abilities in the students without having an emphasis on the steps involved in implementing OB and influencing your curriculum designing by these principles if you are trying to implement OB for your curriculum designing for your program. So now this slide summarizes the overall idea that I have explained to you. Each one of the domains have their own taxonomy, the steps involved from basic to advanced, and generally, as you have seen here, what if the students are valuing their learning process, they are motivated to learn, and then if because of their motivation, if they are applying those concepts more often to become better at or improve their competence, then naturally what will happen, their knowledge will keep growing, right? So the process of knowledge, imparting the knowledge, is not just limited to the classroom teaching. It continues. It's a lifelong learning. The lifelong learning doesn't happen only after the student graduates, right? It is a ongoing process. The moment the student takes the admission, lifelong learning begins, right? So their knowledge will grow if this wheel drives this motivation wheel, and this motivation will drive the psychomotor wheel, and then the overall learning process knowledge will be gained uh, to the desired levels by most of the students, if not all, right? So that's the idea. If you want me to drive this again, it's like this, right? So their wheel of the knowledge will grow. Now let's this is very interesting idea that I'm going to share with all of you. Okay, I think there is a message here from Dr. Sandeep that we need a break of 5 to 10 minutes before we go to the next topic.
Yes. So can we have a break, let's say for 10 minutes or so, and then we can start it again?
Yeah, sure. Wonderful. I'll stop sharing.
That's okay. So that means 3:40 will be starting again. Online participants, we are taking a break, short break of 10 minutes. We'll be starting back again at sharp 3:40. Thank you so much. Mr. Bhagwat will be back at 3:40.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you so much. Mr. Bhagwat, this is Kusumlata here. We are back after the break. Online participants, we are back after the break. So maybe we can start now. Am I audible to you?
Yes, you are audible. I was wondering whether there are any questions.
Okay. Is there any question to Mr. Bhagwat now, to the present audience here? Okay. There are no questions as such as of now, right now. But if they come, let's say during the session, maybe we'll raise hand and then we'll interrupt you if you are okay with that. Otherwise, we'll hold back the questions and then we'll ask towards the end of your talk.
No problem.
Right. Thank you so much. So maybe we can start now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Professor. Mr. Bhagwat, you can start now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is where we briefly stopped our discussion. So let me go ahead. So what I'm going to do here is, you remember that we have picked up certain program outcomes and we have added program specific outcomes, right? So, and combinedly, we got the comprehensive set of program outcomes for our program. So what we are going to do now is pick a program outcome, think about how the students will achieve this program outcome, and whether we have what steps have to be taken by us to design the curriculum so that the students will achieve the respective program outcome. That's the thought process we will have in place now. So out of the, let's say 12 to 15 program outcomes, I'm going to pick one example and then drive this discussion further. So what you see here is, obviously these are the knowledge dimensions, right? These are the taxonomies of cognitive and psychomotor domain, and this is affective domain. You require some strategies for instructional and learning experiences to designing, and then so that the attitude, right attitude towards learning can be developed. But what knowledge is required to be imparted to achieve the program outcomes written over here as an example, and what is the depth of cognitive and psychomotor domain is required, expected to be achieved by the students, is something that we are going to think about. So you take example of, let's say, knowledge of management principles or engineering knowledge. Apply the knowledge, apply itself defines that students have to go here, right? Apply level. And then some solutions for the complex engineering problems have to be learned by the students. So naturally, it may fall between apply and analysis if it is to be engineering knowledge. And if this is only knowledge of management principles, then remember, understand becomes more important, and some part of application may be required, but not that great if just to cover this view of knowledge of management principles, because it doesn't require application and above so much as it is required here for engineering knowledge, for example. So that is exactly what is required here to, this thought process is needed to look at each and every PO and think about what to design to take care of the characteristics of affective domain. So what again on the left side we have to think about what knowledge is to be imparted, right? For knowledge of management principle, maybe factual conceptual is good enough. Procedural knowledge, but theory of the some of these concepts may have to be delivered. They not have to actually apply that, right? In case of these, maybe, right? But for engineering knowledge, if they have to apply, means obviously It's not only the theoretical knowledge is important, but also there have to be some learning experiences to be created for the students to apply that knowledge, right? So this is but when they apply, what do you expect from them? Just to follow the steps given by the teachers, or do it independently without supervision, right? Application, again, for application, these steps are important. So that is the kind of evaluation you have to do for curriculum designing. Now, if I would pick another example here, analytical and problem solving skill. So analytical, this word itself means mandates that students have to go up to the level of analysis. But since analysis is procedural knowledge, then we have to think about what is the level of their competence they should achieve for to say that they have achieved the desired level of analytical and problem solving skills. Likewise, this is another example, right? So these two aspects of psychomotor and cognitive domain have to be considered for every program outcome uh, to begin your curriculum designing process. Now, critical thinking is probably is common for any program. Um, if you pick, I mean, there can't be any program in higher education that doesn't require critical thinking. Only the degree of that competence required to kind of for various programs could vary. For example, Art Science Commerce College has many programs which also requires critical thinking, but the degree of their severity may be slightly lower than maybe engineering and law. More and another problem is that the art science commerce college degree programs are of 3 years. Engineering has 4 years, and law has more than 5 years, 4 years, right? But since they get more time and they require critical thinking more, the students of law, there will have to be more emphasis on the abilities to think critically. So based on the program, as I mentioned, the degree of the severity may change. The competence required to the students of these programs may change. And based on that, you have to choose the right psychomotor level here, right? So that's the idea. That's the point here. So now, if you do this for each program, you will come out with a spectrum like this, right? You have, what is this? This is your cognitive domain. This is your psychomotor domain here at the right side. These are your program outcomes. And C is again cognitive and psychomotor, and it shows you what level is expected to achieved by the students, right? So this means that students for PSO2, students should go to precision level, and when it comes to the knowledge, they should achieve the analysis level, right? At least. And this analysis has to be up to the precision level. That's how you have to look at it. Now, PO5 seems to be extremely critical because the knowledge of the student should grow to create level. And this create level knowledge has to have an ability of articulation. So it's the highest, maybe it's the highest level of precision, I'm sorry, the competence required here, if you compare all other program outcomes. So naturally, what it mandates? It mandates that you have to have more time given to these program outcomes and their associated. So that means that the courses which are associated, not only the courses, the other learning experiences, the labs, practicals, or any industry visit, so on and so forth, right? There has to be more time devoted to these program outcome in your curriculum designing compared to other program outcomes. All are important, but time given to each program outcome will vary depending upon where you want your students to go to. Does it make sense? Or am I making some fundamental mistake here? Okay. Now, if you look at other program, it may have slight variation because this program itself is different. Its requirements are different. It may have other program outcomes which are more critical compared to the first one, right? For example, here PO10 is more important. Here in this case, it was PO5. So if I would compare these two programs, there could be a variation like this in their requirement of the program outcomes. So now this is the template given to the curriculum designing team. Imagine that you have created a small group, uh, and let's say there are 10 different groups, one each belonging to one PO, and they have to take this template, think about how the students will achieve PO5 related requirements, their expectations, requirements. And let's say, imagine that a group of teachers, senior educationists, will need to think about what are the desired cognitive levels and performance indicators, right? How we will say that the student has achieved those desired cognitive levels and psychomotor levels, and how to kind of evaluate it, right? So that's the kind of thinking they will do. What courses and the contents and the pedagogical strategies required, right? What kind of learning experiences will have to be created has to be decided by these teams, each belonging to, let's say, one program outcome, right? And then these teams will have to then come out with learning objectives, content selection, pedagogical strategies, and some assessment methods. And so for a program outcome such as critical thinking, they may come out with some courses which have to be delivered in the classroom, some learning experiences, right, outside of the classroom experiences, right? So this each book doesn't represent a course as such, but let's say that this is a curriculum that is it's a container of the curriculum that cohesively deliver some learning objectives of critical thinking. So these learning objectives are nothing but the performance indicators. So there could be learning outcomes for the courses here, but collectively, right, there could be a couple of courses, there could be a couple of outside of the classroom experiences, industry visits, right, interactions with foreign students. There could be many such, I mean, the activities or interactions, learning experiences which are given in this container. So combinedly, it will have some learning objectives which are associated with this program outcome. So although the performance indicators might not have been written for measuring the program outcomes, right, directly or indirectly, but this is required as a a process, important part of this implementation of OB. You have to design the performance indicators for every program outcome, because they are performance indicators are driven by the part of the curriculum which is taking care of the program outcome, correct? So that's how it is. Now imagine that you have given a task of designing the curriculum to each one of the teams associated with each program. This is a theoretical idea. Imagine that this is what something that you will do, and you will create those many teams and give them this task of coming out with some ideas in the curriculum for every program outcome. There may be some overlaps. We will have to kind of cut those all those unwanted overlapping things and then come out with a comprehensive curriculum designing for a program. So each one of them would come out with their container of performance indicators, content selection, pedagogical strategies, and assessment methods. And then you will have to combine all those to kind of create a program curriculum structure, right? And you'll be ready with beginning the delivery of that program. Each program outcome will have its own performance indicators, and this is the idea, an example of how you can write those performance indicators. Now, once the curriculum teams would be ready with their ideas, because these are the basic ideas which they will come out with, and then the curriculum has to be then designed subsequently by some other team members as well as a part of their team, right? So imagine that this is something that is going to happen, and this curriculum team comes out with another template like this, you based on the PO given to them for to think about, and they will come out with a template, let's say like this, which will communicate clearly that there will be some uh, factual conceptual knowledge, procedural knowledge, and some metacognitive knowledge also will be required to be delivered uh, for the students to be able to achieve the performance indicators of critical thinking. Okay, and at what level of cognition they should reach for, when you deliver the factual conceptual knowledge, which could be a discipline knowledge, classroom, and what is the desired level of cognition there. Let's say understand. So when you teach procedural knowledge, initially that is covered in conceptual, but when you design the activities for the students to apply that, your expectation is that once you design some activities, there has to students have to apply that. But then this lays a foundation for them to work on some complex case studies, which will be evaluated at analysis level. And then there could be some activities related to reflective journaling, group discussions, role playing, which will build their character, right? And again, you are not expecting them to reach higher than apply level here. So you are kind of creating a boundary here that my curriculum design will have these boundaries. I'm going to design some assessments, questions, and activities, case studies for the students to be able to achieve these levels of cognitions, right? And why I'm saying this is because this is my guide, right? So this is how it is interrelated. So the curriculum designing team will report to the central administration that this is what our plan is, and there could be 10 such templates, right? Each belonging to a program outcome, or 13 or 15, whatever, right? So there will be multiple such templates belonging to each program outcome, which will clearly define how your teaching objectives are being met and how your evaluation objectives are being met. Does it make sense? Now, on the left side, I've used the same reference point. And on the right side, you are now going to start designing the curriculum, right? For critical thinking, this is your first guide, this is your second guide. And then based on that, you may say that I am supposed to deliver factual conceptual knowledge, which is already written here, right? This is written here, procedural knowledge and some metacognitive knowledge. So these are my three important areas. To deliver the required factual conceptual knowledge and theory of process, I will require maybe 2 courses worth time, right? And then these will be classroom teaching. Some of that will be outside of the classroom teaching. For outside of the classroom teaching, I will create some activities, case studies. I will have to design the group discussion so that metacognition level knowledge also can be addressed here. For factual conceptual knowledge, the quizzes and written exams are good enough. For procedural knowledge, I will have to design the activities, case studies. And then obviously each one of these assessment tools will have its own type of questions. So objective types of questions, subjective and essay type questions, or some problem statement, correct? So this is, and then you know that I am supposed to take the students, evaluate the students at these desired cognitive levels. So this gives you, as a curriculum designer, a very clear idea on how each objective of the teaching is being met, how the evaluation objectives are being met, what questions I am supposed to design, and how am I going to map those questions, right? I don't have to think anything beyond understand level here if I'm designing the questions here. Likewise, if I'm designing the questions for written exam, I don't have to cross apply level. Likewise here, I don't have to cross analysis level because that's the highest level of cognition anyway I'm supposed to address here. Correct? So this gives you a very clear idea of how what kind of assessments I'm going to design, what kind of questions are supposed to be designed there. So it's a kind of extremely clear mapping right from the top to designing a question. Correct? So this will give you an idea of how to build something called as uh, course blueprint. Now, what happens is that now this curriculum designing team comes out with certain rough idea of some courses, the content, and what is stuffed into that course. Let's say this course has more of factual conceptual knowledge and some part of procedural knowledge. Some other course may have more procedural knowledge. It may still be theoretical, but again, there are more application oriented learning activities also designed as a part of the course and its content. So it's not that a course is only delivered in the classroom. You also know that, right? So now if you have to identify, you open your book, just try to create a structure in your mind that these are my units, these are my subtopics, right? In those units, these are the major areas of the teaching to be done by me. So you may be able to kind of identify that, oh, this appears to be factual knowledge, this appears to be conceptual knowledge, this appears to be procedural knowledge, right? So it's not that difficult to quickly find out the groups, the areas, the chunks of the knowledge inside a book, uh, that and how it's mapped to the knowledge dimensions. Correct? It's not that something that you cannot do. So if you kind of try to create those topics or the units, if you want to call those as, then group your subtopics, and then say that, okay, then find out the knowledge dimensions. Typically factual will not be there, because we are into higher education, so it is always conceptual and above, right? But I have just given an example here. Essentially, it will always be conceptual, procedural, and sometimes it is the theory of essentially how to think. For example, if I have to build the attitude and teach metacognition, I may have to teach the students how to think, how to self-evaluate, how to build a strategy to improve my performance in certain areas of weaknesses observed through my academic performance. So how to can overcome those as a mentor. Let's say a teacher has to help the students, and it's a part of that course, right? It doesn't have to be written in the course as a part of the book, but still it's a kind of container. It's a part. It's a kind of container of the course. It has got all these activities as well. So I'm also considering those as a part of this course blueprint model, and identifying these knowledge dimensions. Now, our template gives us elaborate and clear idea of how what is the desired category of the cognition. Based on that, I will associate it. Now, I have simplified this a lot. It may not be very simple, but with practice, it will become simple if you apply it. Now, this is the desired level of cognition, which is nothing but the evaluation. So this is teaching process or objectives of the teaching. This is how you will evaluate whether this teaching was effective or not. And for that, you will use this assessment process. So when you have to now design the assessments or design the questions, you will have to think about the right side of this template, this blueprint model. If you go back to this template, which I had explained earlier, right? It has the teaching objectives and the evaluation objectives. And you also remember this template, right? this slide, in which generally we have created given a direction to curriculum designing. You will now start thinking about each one of these pairs, right? Now, what is this pair? This pair is factual and remember. So remembering has its own table, okay, which shows you cognitive process and action verbs. Each one of you must be already familiar with the action verbs, right? But within those action verbs, you can easily categorize those in recognizing and recalling for remember, and some assessment tools. So you can, in your institution, you can create your own template like this. That if I want to, so that everybody can start using it, right? They don't have to reinvent for every course differently, right? So the moment you know that this is a group of subtopics which has to be taken to remember level, I have to design these questions and these could be my assessment tools. And the freedom is given to the teachers that you pick and choose, but ensure that this is overall objective is met, right? So some autonomy is obviously available here. It's not going to make it rigid, right? But it can't be open autonomy. There has to be some framework. There has to be some boundaries. And beyond that, nobody can go. And that is what we are trying to do. We are for every game there are boundaries, right? There is a boundary line. The baller cannot cross that. Otherwise, it's a no ball. So it's like that. Each one has to respect that limit. And but before that, there is a complete freedom given to the baller. The action, the speed, or the techniques, everything is entirely the baller's autonomy, correct? But there are rules of the game, and these we are trying to define those rules of the game. So based on that, you would start thinking about each one of these groups, right? I go to the template, find out what meets my evaluation process, pick and choose the right processes and the action verbs. For every a cognitive level, there could be a table like this, right? But when it comes to now apply, you remember that I had told you about psychomotor domain. It is associated with application and above. So we cannot just look at the this in isolation, this table in isolation. We have to also look at what is expected out of psychomotor domain, whether it's a precision level, manipulation level, or only the imitation level, right? I know that procedural knowledge has to be taught here, theory of that, and then I have to expect students to apply that. But are they going to just imitate it or reach the precision level? So based on that, I have to choose the right set of action verbs here, right? So it's a two different taxonomies will come together the moment I am taking the students to apply and above. That's the point here. So you will be then able to create a course blueprint model using these various templates, and then think about what difficulty levels of the questions you have to also plan accordingly, right? So we have looked at the content areas, knowledge levels, desired cognitive levels, action verbs, but what is not yet decided by us is the difficulty level. So how to think about it? Uh, so again, you can. This is something that I have researched, and within the the each level of cognition, if you are planning to design, let's say, understanding level questions, but you want to keep the medium complexity, then you should use these keywords. For high difficulty, these could be the keywords. So again, for your program, you can design a model like this to define, right? When somebody has to design low difficulty level questions, they should use these action verbs. Likewise, high difficulty will be these action verbs, and use these templates. And then it is very easy for the teachers to then design high quality questions which are outcomes focused, right? So these are some examples. All right. So now go back to your course blueprint diagram, course blueprint model, create a space for difficulty level and think upfront, what should be my difficulty level here of the designing question. So some of the groups will have all the type of, but I'm just keeping it simple, as I said, it may not be this simple. You may high can never be the only difficulty level. You may have to use low and medium complexity also, right? But in certain cases, there is only low and medium, certain cases it is only low, certain cases it is all the three types of questions, isn't it? So, but it is required to streamline the thought process and avoiding the misalignment of assessment outcomes and um, the instructions by the teachers. So these are the benefits. Let me show you what the benefits of using some structured way of implementing OB. Now, what you can do is, if you start creating a capability or the maturity index of your program, right? So in, let's say this was your program outcome or various program outcomes. This is your curriculum. And now where do you think the current maturity is, right? So progressively, obviously, you have to take this maturity to the next level. To be able to do that, probably you will find your own quality indicators. These indicators are already defined in NBA, NAC manual, or there could be some international references. You can either use those or you can have your own program specific accreditation manual, right? It is written by you for your own program, which has got all the quality indicators related to your courses, activities, extracurricular project, everything that you believe this is the right uh, quality manual for my program, and audit your program based on that and find out what is your maturity level, right? The external like NBA doesn't have to come and tell me about my maturity of program, isn't it? And you don't have to collect a lot of documentation. Keep it very simple, but have some kind of standard process of evaluating the maturity of your programs. Now, these are the key indicators. Now, green means obviously you are doing good. Faint green is not so good. Red is obviously not at all good, right? And then over a period of time, these gaps are eliminated step by step. Correct? So that's the benefit of implementing a structured way of implementing OB. And then outcomes measurement is a subsequent topic. But I think what I wanted to communicate to all of you through this session, I have completed that part of my presentation. So I would like to conclude it here. Let me know if you have any questions and suggestions, any criticism, something like that. Let me know. I would love to hear from all of you.
The question is that once you uh, provide this job to a committee or a panel for deciding about the overall curriculum and overall structure, then is it not a kind of limitation on the instructors or the faculty members to follow those? Because suppose once we decide that this particular PO should go to that particular level of the learning in terms of your attributes or any teaching levels, then suppose one subject, one course, which is suppose the team or the panel says that, okay, this particular course of that domain should actually follow this particular pattern in terms of the contents, in terms of the teaching methodology or the evaluation pattern, or so is it not uh, a kind of rigid boundary?
So as I mentioned to you, every game has its own rules, right? So it gives you enough freedom, enough autonomy to design. The instruction design is entirely the teacher's responsibility. Right? They have to think creatively, and there is nobody's telling them how to do it, right? It's every teacher knows what should be done to help the students to perform better. So this freedom is there with the teachers. If somebody asks the teacher, let's say, can you tell us, whether your students are achieving the desired outcomes of the program as well as the course? What will be the answer of the teacher, response of the teacher, right? The teacher has to articulate the response such a way that it is understood by others who are asking this question to the teacher. Right?
My particular point was that this particular process, because it gives an idea for initiating some kind of concept for the curriculum development first time. So that is the particular challenge. Once the student, because in our case, for example, the faculty, they obviously there is a particular methodology and the procedure to set the curriculum, and there are different stakeholders, including the industry people and
Yes.
alumni.
Yes.
And they have set, and the BOS and all kind of those structures are there through which we design the curriculum.
Yes.
And then if there is a gap between the courses outcomes with mapping with the POs, then it's okay that the faculty or instructor will think that, okay, due to my course or in the particular course there is a gap, okay, and then they will definitely do something.
Yes.
But for example, if there is a predefined committee or the panel and then they decide everything, and they may not be the expert of every courses.
Absolutely.
It is another issue.
It is not expected at all.
He is not the expert of every.
Absolutely, absolutely. So they have to invite the right people to be part of. So initially, let's say this team is of 3-4 people, right? Once they decide the main framework of that program, they can invite all the experts, subject matter experts, to design the curriculum, right? So that's the obvious step involved in that, right? So just to quickly answer your question, think about a new teacher entering your institute. For an experienced teacher who has spent 15, 20 years, they might find it very obvious. But for a new teacher, you want the new teachers to be part of your process. Make sure that they deliver the teaching in a manner in which you would want them to do, right? So for them, it's a very useful tool, right? So you have to consider the variations that can cause because of the different people entering into the teaching process at different point in times. Likewise, next year when you are executing the same program, whether you will be able to achieve the consistency in which you were delivering the teaching earlier in the earlier batches. So you have to think just beyond the boundaries which you are finding as rigid, but at the same time, those are required for somebody to at least understand what is my starting point. So it's a mix of autonomy given, but at the same time, this autonomy has boundary.
Yes, yes, okay.
Right?
Thanks.
So a book itself is a boundary. Beyond that, you don't have to teach anything, right? The teacher has to make sure that this book is covered as a part of my curriculum, or syllabus rather, right? So book is a boundary. Within that, how to teach the content of that book is left to the teacher. So that creativity is not taken away from the teachers.
Okay, thanks.
And you begin your designing process with some assumptions in mind. You have to evaluate whether those assumptions were correct or not. And then based on your revisions in the curriculum, in the academic batches to follow, is expected to be done. So you will obviously be able to collect the objective and structured feedback if you have a structure in place. Otherwise, the feedback itself will be haphazard or not. It will be more dependent on some opinions of people, right? Instead of that, there are certain references given that based on that, give your suggestions, feedback, right? So you will receive very structured feedback if you have a framework like this in place. That's my contention.
Yeah. That is perfectly Right. I think I agree with that.
Thank
This
you,
is
sir.
very useful tool for particular revision process. It is wonderful process, and thanks that people have utilized their mind and worked hard to develop this type of methodology. But my particular question was about the initiation,
Hmm.
and I think overall this will help. Thanks. Thanks for sharing. Oh,
My pleasure, sir.
next questions.
Any other questions? So, Professor Lakshmi, you have mentioned here a few things. But are those the questions? I'm not getting what your question is. If you could just speak up, it would be great.
Sir, I think the audience will not be able to unmute themselves.
Oh, okay.
Right. So,
You can ask questions, right? Okay, I think, Mr. Bhagwat, there are questions. I think you have already explained them in detail.
Sure.
Online participants, if you have any further question, you may please write it there in the chat box. Queries here in LNM IIT, we do not have any more.
Okay.
Yes, so I don't see. Sandeep, do we have any further questions? No. So there are no more online questions also.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Bhagwat. Since we are meeting virtually, so we can only thank right now the way we can, something like this. And since we know that Dr. Mohit is going to come here
Yes.
on campus
Yes.
from your team, so please don't mind that. Your token of appreciation we would like to hand over to Mohit, and maybe he can hand over it to you. So that should be okay with you.
Oh, that's not a problem. Thank you so much. Yes, Mohit will be there for the hands-on session, and I understand that all the teachers are expected to get their laptops also in the classroom,
Yes.
and so that Mohit will be able to just ask them to follow the steps
Right.
to accomplish certain tasks.
Right.
So
So
that is the imitation, by the way.
what is it?
That is the imitation level of psychomotor, right? Mohit telling the teachers to follow certain steps.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's what. So we'll be announcing that in advance that all of us, we should be coming here with laptop. In any case, Sandeep Sani and myself, we are coming daily with the laptop, but all participants should come with their laptop on those days. We'll announce that in advance.
Certainly. I hope that this session was useful. I felt that that probably you might have found something that you could take up in your curriculum designing process. So OB goes a lot beyond what is written in those manuals of accreditations.
Right.
Accreditation manuals are written for masses and for institutions of excellence such as LMNIT. I think the institution should strive beyond go beyond what is written and expected out of a
Right.
accreditation manual.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you
So
so much.
thank you so much, Mr. Bhagwat. We are honored to have you for such a wonderful session for approx 2 hours. And we would like to be in touch for further communications. We'll be submitting SAR soon from LNM IIT. Maybe we might face some difficulty. We would like to have your guidance and we would like to continue this.
My pleasure. I'll be more than happy to help you out.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Online participants, we are completing this session for the day, and then we'll be meeting back again tomorrow. And we are starting again tomorrow at 10 a.m. Thank you so much